Okay, so what we're diving into today is a really, truly unsettling document. It was found in a sealed trunk right after World War II, and it's called the Tenebrous Chronicle of Lysandra Vane. Now, here's the thing. We don't know if this is a genuine confession from the 17th century or just one of the most brilliant pieces of Gothic horror ever written. And it all starts with a very stark warning. Right from the very first page, the clerk who originally found and cataloged this thing sets this incredibly chilling tone. He's basically screaming at the reader that this isn't just a story. The words themselves, he says, are dangerous. He was convinced this text existed somewhere outside the protection of God, outside the laws of man. And his warnings get way more specific. He claims that the phrases inside this book aren't just metaphors. They're instruments of corruption. He warns that the author's spirit is parasitic, that it's looking for you when you're alone to exchange souls. But the real kicker, the most terrifying part, is that last warning. The simple act of reading it is an act of invocation. And that is the central mystery we're grappling with here. Is this a real account of a woman who literally tore a hole in reality, or is it an unbelievably elaborate fake? To even begin to answer that, we have to understand the woman at the heart of it all, Baroness Lysandra Vane. So the Chronicle introduces us to Lysandra not as some simple, straightforward villain, but as a product of her environment. Her entire philosophy, this absolute scorn for all of creation, was apparently forged in the cold, decaying walls of her family home. On the surface, Lysandra was everything an aristocrat was supposed to be. Beautiful, poised, the mistress of this grand estate. But on the inside, her mind was just a storm of nihilism. The Chronicle says she saw all human effort, art, love, faith, as completely frail and pointless. And this wasn't something that happened to her later in life. She apparently developed this philosophy from a very young age. And this was her home, Aethelred Hall. You have to understand, the book doesn't describe it as just a house. It's almost like a living thing, an entity of pure decay. It was built on what the locals called bleeding stone, and it was a place where sunlight was weak and sickly, where the air itself smelled of rot. This magnificent gloom was basically the cradle for her entire worldview. So, what pushes a person from just having a dark philosophy to actively plotting the destruction of reality itself? What was the tipping point for her? Well, it all started with a marriage and a war. See, her husband, Baron Lucius Vane, was a soldier. He found the hall's decay pretty tedious, and their marriage was, it was a cold transaction. So when war called him away, his absence wasn't a source of grief for Lysandra. Oh no, it was an opportunity. It gave her the solitude she desperately needed. But the real catalyst, that was a much more profound and much more personal tragedy. Lysandra got pregnant, but according to the Chronicle, she didn't see it with any kind of tenderness. She saw it as a biological sin. It was a vulnerability, a weakness of the flesh that she just had to put up with to produce an heir and keep her control over the estate. After a long and apparently agonizing labor, the child was born. It was a perfect human form, but it was completely silent. There was no cry, no breath. The text just calls it a waxen stillness, cold porcelain complete. The child was stillborn. And this was the turning point. For Lysandra, this wasn't a tragedy to be mourned. No, for her, this was the ultimate cosmic proof of her philosophy, that creation is a pointless, cruel, and totally flawed design. This loss didn't break her heart. It focused all her rage into a weapon. So with this newfound, absolute hatred for creation, she starts to form a plan. A terrifyingly systematic plan for revenge. Lysandra didn't just fall into despair, she started to study. She went looking in the crypt beneath Aethelred Hall, a place reserved for the unbaptized children of her family line. And there, behind a secret door, she found it, the Liber Azerate. And get this, it wasn't a book of spells or magic. It was a text of what she called blasphemous science, a kind of geometric blueprint for dismantling the entire universe. This book gave her the exact method she was looking for. Her plan wasn't born from some chaotic madness. It was cold, it was calculated, it was logical. The Chronicle lays it out almost like a lab report, a chilling, 5-step scientific process to achieve what the book called cosmic severance. Now, a plan this big needs a power source. To fuel her final ritual, Lysandra needed life energy, and it had to be shed violently. So she formed this secret social club, luring these young, vain guests to the hall with promises of decadent philosophy and parties. They all came looking for a good time, never realizing they were just components in a cosmic equation. The final piece of the puzzle wasn't an incantation or a chant, it was music. But don't think of this as a song. Using an instrument called a viola da gamba, Lysandra played what the text calls the 11-fold current, a series of dissonant geometric sounds. These weren't notes for the ear, they were calculated vectors fired directly into the void, designed to wake up some dark power sleeping deep beneath the hall. So, the theory is mastered, the fuel has been gathered, and the key has been turned. And this is where the Chronicle moves to the absolutely horrifying climax of her work, the final ritual, on an altar rock deep beneath Aethelred Hall. According to the text, the ritual's success, it wasn't some grand explosion. It was a silent, profound shift in the very fabric of reality. It says no human eye could actually see it happen, but on a cosmic level, every single atom screamed as the fundamental laws of order just collapsed. And Lysandra herself, she ceased to exist. She just abandoned her physical form, her mortal shell, to become one with the chaos she'd unleashed. The only proof that the ritual ever even happened was what she left behind on that altar, her severed head and her left hand. Those, the now silent instrument, and Aethelred Hall itself, which became a permanent gateway for the void. It's an absolutely incredible, horrifying story. But what happened next? I mean, is there any evidence at all outside of this one cursed manuscript that any of this actually took place? And this is where the historical record gets really blurry. For almost 200 years after the Chronicle was supposedly written, the Vane family line was just plagued by tragedy. Every single owner of the hall died suspiciously. Suicides, unsolved murders, all while local rumors of a really malevolent haunting just kept growing. The fear got so intense that in the mid-1800s, the local council actually bought the estate and systematically destroyed it, stone by stone. And this brings us right back to that central question. Today, the site is just an overgrown woodland. There are no ruins, no relics, nothing. Historians have no definitive proof that a woman named Lysandra Vane even existed. So, is this chronicle the real confession of a woman who declared war on the entire universe? Or is it just an incredible piece of fiction, built on generations of local tragedy and superstition? The chronicle itself offers no easy answers. It only leaves us with its own terrifying logic. The scribe who copied it warned that the simple act of engaging with these words, of learning the story, is an act of invocation. So the final question, then, isn't just whether the story is true. It's whether, by exploring it with me right now, we've just opened a door.